let's get into the big topic of open source, something that we actually say at Red Hat.
We have a
This is so
we
awesome.
are an open culture that believes in the importance of
What is that process that a developer, or let's say
as the Kubernetes ecosystem really boomed?
Hi, and welcome to an episode of In the Clouds. I'm your host, Stu Miniman. We're here in the middle of October. Last time we got together, we had a preview for KubeCon, Cloud Native Con, which is happening in Chicago in just a couple of weeks, the beginning of November. And oftentimes, when we've got KubeCon, there's an update to the Kubernetes, and we, of course, at Red Hat are tracking that with the OpenShift releases. So we just recently did a live cast with our product management team on the OpenShift channel, talking about what's new in 4.14. And usually what we like to do on this program is bring one of the lead product managers on to give us a little bit of a focused look, a little bit more of an executive summary, what's happening in the cloud, what we're hearing from customers in that space. So we will be talking in this episode about OpenShift 4.14, and happy to welcome to the program. Thank you so much for joining us, Siamak Sadeghianfar, joining us from Sweden. Siamak, 4.14. It's a lot always going on. We've got customer requests for enhancements that go into it. Of course, some of the core pieces from the Kubernetes pieces, so many of the layered products that go on top of it. But before we get into all the goodness in OpenShift, could you please just give a quick intro of yourself, your background, how long you've been to Red Hat, and tell us a little bit about your team?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me to begin with, Stu. I'm Siamak, part of the OpenShift product management team at Red Hat, and I lead a team of product managers that focus on cloud native technologies, we call them, on OpenShift, heavily focused on C and CF. And as you are aware, a lot of the innovation is moved within the C and CF space. And a good colleague of mine used to call Kubernetes become boring. We do most of the fun stuff in C and CF, and that's what I usually deal with. I have been at Red Hat for quite a long time, 13 years. Just recently, it's been my anniversary, and it means also I've seen OpenShift from day one. How it was, OpenShift was formed about the same time from 1.0 when I joined Red Hat. So it's been a fun journey to watch and be involved with.
Wow, 13 years. Congratulations. I actually, just last week was my 3-year anniversary, so just a decade more, a couple of pucks, as we usually talk about, that we get there. Wow, yeah, 13 years ago. That's when I started doing the Cube 13 years ago. So a lot has changed. Yeah, your team, I know that, serverless and service mesh, so some great, cloud native projects that are there. Okay, so first thing, 4.14, really excited. We've got a piece of the product called hosted control planes, which we've talked about on this program a couple of times. I think it was 2 releases ago. We had Andy Cather on talk about really what this is going to mean for our cloud services. And in 4.14, it's now going to be fully available. So if you could, for our audience, just give them a little bit, background, hosted control planes, what it is, why it's important, and where it's going to be available now in 4.14.
Absolutely, yeah. So 4.14, like I said, OpenShift 4.14, it came with a lot of updates, a lot of goodies, and exciting improvements, in addition to everything that Kubernetes 1.27 provides. So OpenShift is Kubernetes, enterprise Kubernetes, so there are a lot of enhancement already coming from upstream, and it's enriched with a lot of other aspects. One of the more important things from our perspective is the hosted control plane, like you mentioned. And the name is quite descriptive when somebody hears what it is, but not initially when you hear it. So what it does is I briefly explain what it is before I get into what's new in 4.14 about it. Is that when somebody runs Kubernetes, you usually have to have a control plane, and you have a data plane, and it's your worker nodes. Control plane is the brain of the cluster, and in the case of OpenShift, that's most of our customers have minimum 3 nodes for running that. And when you look at the trends of Kubernetes clusters across the industry, and this comes clearly in the CNCF survey when you look at the years over, like from 2020 toward 2023. The size of clusters keep getting smaller. The number of clusters keeps increasing within the same cluster. So for each of those, it means that you got to have one of those control planes for each of the clusters. If you have 20 of them, 50 of them, and there are a lot of resources, infrastructure dedicated to that. What hosted control plane allows us to do is that allows us to host the control plane of OpenShift on another OpenShift, hence the name hosted coming from. So 3 nodes, for example, that is the brain of an OpenShift, that could run in a namespace on a different OpenShift, reduces the footprint significantly, and there are a lot of expected agility and productivity around both operation and developer side of this, because similar to the journey a lot of us have gone through, instead of dealing with virtual machines or bare metal server, you're dealing with pods now, even for the control plane. So that has been a huge improvement. A lot of our customers are asking about it because it significantly reduces the footprint of the entire fleet of clusters customers have. And when you have a single cluster, perhaps is not a big difference, but it adds up as you add more and more clusters. Very much in line with the sustainability goal that a lot of our customers have as well, because it reduces not only from the resource utilization of the infrastructure, but also power utilization of a data center goes down because of this reduction.
Yeah, right. So if I look, the 2 places we've got it is, first of all, in our managed offering on AWS, Red Hat OpenShift service on AWS, or ROSA, as well as bare metal. So in the cloud, if I pull that control plane out of really the customer's purview and we're handing it over to our SREs, it is going to have an initial lower cost as well as speed up implementation. And in the bare metal offering, right, it's faster, it's a little cheaper, power, all the things you want. And for the most part, usually it's like, okay, well, what's the trade-off? Is there anything customers should be aware of if they've been, used to OpenShift today, hosted control planes? Is there anything that they need to adjust for now that kind of the control plane is the hosted like it is?
In the basic comparison, if I do, is the same type of evaluation that we did for application when we were choosing virtual machines versus container. The same type of thoughts and infrastructure expectations, I think the same trade-offs apply here as well, because now the control plane is running on the same pods, and there are on the cluster that is hosting all these control planes, then there are the operational aspect of running that cluster. That's something that customers need to actively think about, because that one is slightly different from how the rest of the OpenShift clusters, which are for the tenants and where the workloads need to be managed and operated, what kind of access needs to be in place, what kind of network policies and things like that. So those are the aspects that I can think of that are slightly come into difference. On the pros of those, though, there are significant changes. We talk about, you briefly mentioned the SREs, and that has been one of the big problems, not only for Red Hat, is that it's providing managed OpenShift instances on AWS, as ROSA and Azure and other flavors of it, but also a lot of our customers are providing managed OpenShift for their own customers. And there is always this friction of, I'm providing you this cluster, but please do not touch these areas of it, right? And this is to an extent manageable through access control, obviously, but there are all these exceptions that are way more than a handful of them when it comes to it, as we see among our customer, that a customer for a certain reason wants to have more access to the cluster than SRE allows them, and that creates the possibility of creating damage for those clusters, because the tenant can access things that they're not supposed to. And also, control plane creates a really clear segmentation between these roles, because the control plane is not really part of the cluster that you're running your applications on, and elsewhere in a different cluster, you can hide a lot of this configuration that the tenants of the cluster, even the admins on the tenant cluster, are not supposed to touch or change.
Okay, awesome. We put in the chat, there's the release notes for 4.14. There's the what's new or what's next page on Red Hat. I did note the 4.14 stuff hasn't quite gotten there yet, but if you go to our YouTube channel for OpenShift, you'll find the video replay of it. Additionally, for hosted control planes, we're going to throw in the chat. We've got a good presence at AWS reInvent. So since one of the offerings is on Amazon that we have there, we're going to have lots of people there, presentations and the like. So be sure to stop by the booth, come check out. I will actually be there in Vegas. You, me, and 75,000 of our closest friends in the cloud. So happy to be there. I've got one of the members of my team is going to be running a demo in what's called the Jam Lounge. So lots of activity for reInvent. So yeah, Siamak, thank you. Hosted control planes. I know I remember, it was at a KubeCon like almost 2 years ago when we're going to re-architect the control plane. And it took a little while for at least me to understand where it was. So we understand the maturity of the technology, but just understanding how it fits in the customer environments. I think you did a great job of explaining that. So we've got a lot else to talk about. So maybe let's talk about, the second thing from a security standpoint. So, of course, security is a huge focus from a Red Hat standpoint. It's one of the top things I talk to our customers about. One of the main reasons they come to, a trusted partner like Red Hat. So, what's newer, the updates in 4.14 when we think from a security standpoint?
Sure, and that's a great point that a lot of customers ask about it. And I remember the early days of OpenShift that when we were pushing the secure by default aspect of the platform, customers initially were at unease because there were some things they could do on Kubernetes that they could not by default do on OpenShift, and that has been a long journey till those expectations are set that this is the right way of running Kubernetes for production. So one of the things that we have had a lot of requests on is helping customers to implement various type of compliance and security practices on OpenShift. And one of the recent addition of these guidelines, a lot of good security guidelines really coming from DoD, the Department of Defense. This is I think customers in North America are more aware of it, but gradually in EMEA and other regions also, we're seeing that they are consumers of these guidelines. And for agencies that work with DoD, this is a hard requirement for implementing those practices. But like I said, there are a lot of demand for the same type of practices in the commercial sectors as well. And in 4.14, that profile of security is added to the compliance operator. So the platform helps you scan the platform if based on those guidelines, if it's set up properly, and gives you suggestions and to correct it and put that security posture that particular guideline requires your cluster and your applications to be in. There are other profiles that already existed on the platform as a part of the compliance operator. Addition of DSASTIC, which is this new guideline from DoD that I mentioned, is something that was recently added in 4.14.
Okay. Yeah, security we know is something that needs to be at every layer in the stack. We've got a lot of activity we've been doing in the supply chain activity of it. I'm curious also, one of the things we announced at Summit was the Red Hat Developer Hub. And from Backstage, there are the plugins that go into that. So things like, GitOps and pipelines tie into that. So it's focused on that platform engineering and make it easy for developers, but I would think that the whole DevSecOps story ties into that too. Is there anything we should be thinking of, pipelines or some of the other pieces?
Absolutely. So, like you said, Backstage is getting a lot of attention because of platform engineering topics, but I usually compare it to the tip of the iceberg because there is a lot that needs to happen behind it in order for a platform to function as an organization. And a lot of that has to do with DevSecOps, the automation of security and other aspects of the infrastructure that is needed for application delivery. One of the things that is recently added to the platform is Tickdown Chains that reach general availability alongside this release of OpenShift. Tickdown Chains is one of the CNCF or one of the CDF projects that is actually moving to CNCF next year that focuses on supply chain security and automatic signing and provenance of artifacts that are produced during a CI pipeline. So if you have your application source code building and testing and pushing images to your clusters, those artifacts would be automatically signed by the keys and verified and attested that they are the images that were supposed to be built and are not tampered with. And that's one of the areas that was added. Secret management is nothing new. It has been something that most customers deal with one way or other, and having the managing sensitive data. And it's always a question of how do I make use of this sensitive data within my applications or CI or my GitOps workflow without leaking them in places that they're not supposed to. The first part of the answer is often quite easy. You use a secret manager. There are a couple of them out there, some open source, some commercial. The difficult part is how do I bring them into the cluster? And one of the addition within this release is that the secret store CSI driver, which is one of the upstream in AppSec, I believe, a CSI driver that is sitting as the glue between Kubernetes clusters and different secret manager, and allows you to expose those sensitive data, being a certificate or username password for a database or other type of tokens specific to the workload that needs it to consume it. As soon as that workload disappears, that sensitive data would also disappear from the cluster, and even you have controls of how it appears on the cluster. So that's also one of the areas that we have had a lot of asks from customers, and I'm glad to see that in this release is coming to the platform as a tech preview.
Awesome. Yeah, so we know the work of security is never done. So lots of good updates there, mix of some released as well as some tech previews, as said there. All right, so we've talked a little bit about cloud already with hosted control planes, but we know kind of the integrations, the partnerships we have with the cloud providers is a lot of activity that goes on. So why don't you walk us through some of the items that are cloud specific in 4.14?
Absolutely. So one new addition that has been long standing is ARM support on Google Cloud. So OpenShift already supports heterogeneous clusters. It means that you can have multiple architectures of worker nodes within the same cluster. Maybe you have apps that require x86 and some apps that require ARM because of the benefits of the ARM architecture. And this wasn't available specifically on GCP. So that is added and brings support essentially for ARM architecture and heterogeneous cluster across all the hyperscalers. We already had this in it for AWS and Azure, and GCP is great to see that it's added in this platform in this release as well.
Yeah, and so if I could just comment on that, because you're right, it's so often technologies, even when we're talking about software, it really gets tied to something. So, I think about it was like, oh, virtual machines. It's like, it was very much an x86 discussion, but you look at our multi-architecture support, we've got x86, we've got ARM across, all the public clouds. Of course, we've got ZNP support also too. So it's a nice, well-rounded piece because, at the end of the day, OpenShift, if Linux can live there, we can live there. So, the RHEL team's done a lot of work to kind of, move that trail forward for us. And yeah, I know, having talked to the team that works on ARM, the challenge is it's not just like it's like there's so many different variations of what's going on there. So it's good now that we kind of have, support across all the clouds. So excellent stuff there.
Yeah, definitely. And this is an area that I encourage people to keep an eye on. We're doing a lot in the ARM space, and tying it back to the hosted control plane that we talked about. The same types of support are coming already available in those areas that ARM is available to. We focus on operational efficiency, obviously, and utilization that we talked about. Another area that we got a lot of excitement about, and I thought might be useful to talk about here, is supporting Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or CI, with OpenShift. So we're all about partnership, bringing OpenShift everywhere that customers want, really. And the recent addition with increased interest as the type of partnership we have with Oracle. It's released as dev preview, but in the following releases, we will progress and get to general availability. But it's the first step of that path, and bringing OpenShift to OCI infrastructure that customers already have.
Yeah, no, it's a big one. I mean, anybody that's followed the industry knows that the Red Hat Oracle relationship has some ebb and flows over the last 15 years or so. So last year, when RHEL support was added, into Oracle Cloud, first question we all got was like, "Hey, how about OpenShift?" So the recent Oracle Cloud event talked about it. There's a good roadmap there. It's great to see that in tech preview. And yeah, we'll see. Just because Oracle Cloud definitely has had some great progress recently, and from an OpenShift standpoint, we'd like to be fully agnostic in all of those environments. So yeah, it's a good one. I know people are looking forward to that, and allow our customers to embrace it. So when we talked about hosted control planes, that lives across bare metal as well as on Rosa. I believe there's another bare metal related item to Amazon that I know I'm pretty excited about. So maybe let's talk about OSV.
Yes, absolutely. So OpenShift virtualization, for people might not be familiar with, is taking advantage of the KubeVirt project, so you can run virtual machines on top of OpenShift as possible. You have a single platform for different type of workloads. We talk about a trade-off, so that trade-off becomes a lot easier when you have it in a single platform. We can follow the same type of infrastructure operations regardless of how we deploy those. And the recent addition is that OSV is made available on ROSA, like you mentioned. The managed OpenShift flavor that is natively available in AWS and directly on AWS as well. Customers are deploying their own OpenShift clusters, and that's also a combination that's supported with hosted control plane. So this is kind of like a closed circle with like emphasizing hosted control plane not being different from the rest of OpenShift. It's just a flavor of the architecture for deployment of it. So it brings a lot of flexibility on different types of deployment, different combination of deployments for customers, and for customers who are bringing more traditional type of workloads that are perhaps not ready for container, and they don't make sense to become containers, to continue to run in virtual machines, but with the flexibility of the infrastructure that is supported.
Yeah, I mean, the discussion point is we often, the headlines talk about every new technology is going to kill the generation before, but the reality is they all live together. So the wonderful thing about OpenShift is, yes, containers, Kubernetes, wonderful, but we extended containers into the serverless world with Knative, and we've embraced virtual machines with the KubeVirt project. So that OpenShift virtualization, one of the top conversations I've been having with customers and partners this year, just because everybody's looking at their VM estate and saying, okay, what do I do with it? Some of it I want to modernize, some of it I want to move to the cloud. But as you said, there's certain applications I'm going to keep them in VMs for a long time. So can I pull them into a more modern cloud native architecture and management environment? And we've been able to do that for a while in the data center, but now we're able to do it in the cloud, or even customers that have those hybrid environments. So something, I know, again, it's one of those items that we've been working on, and it's there. Amazon did a lot of early work to make that bare metal environment for certain specific type of applications, and us being able to take advantage of that is pretty awesome. So yeah, again, something we'll talk about at reInvent. There's actually a roadshow going on right now related to virtualization. So if you want to learn more, there's lots of resources that you can find, or feel free to reach out. Siamak, so we've talked Google, we've talked Amazon, we've talked some cool features. Anything for our friends on the Microsoft Azure front?
Of course, yeah. We can't leave Azure out, obviously. So on the Azure front, there are multiple enhancements. Like, to be frank with you, there are enhancements across all the type of infrastructure, not just the hyperscalers, to Nuantix and VMware, vSphere, and there are other platforms. So I'm trying to focus on the larger pieces of items and bring a little more attention to it. So Azure in that category, and some one of the newer, bigger items that again, this came out of a lot of requests from customers. To your point at the beginning, we have a lot of focus on what customers want us to do on the platform, what their pain points is, and this particular edition is around improving security in how OpenShift works with Azure APIs and Azure services. One of the asks from customers is that they prefer to use short-lived tokens that have reduced privileges when we work with any of the cloud APIs. They're named differently based on the cloud provider. In the case of Azure, it's a workload identity and managed identity, the two forms of them. And in 4.14, we're taking advantage of those to give a lot more flexibility to customers to really close down or reduce the privileges that are needed for provisioning clusters on Azure. And in the next release, we're bringing this into other operators, optional operators that customers might be installing through Operator Hub, so that even if the cluster is using those short-lived tokens, if they're installing some of the operators, they might not on 4.14. On the following release, they also will move to a more secure form and reduce privileges when they're provisioning resources on the cloud provider on Azure specifically. This is already in place for AWS. We are expanding it to Azure, and Google Cloud obviously will follow.
Yeah, the discussion I usually have is, OpenShift, we have the same code that goes everywhere, and for the most part, it's the same. But anytime there's rough edges where it's like, oh wait, we have one thing supported before the others, we do try to smooth them on. We try to make it easy.
Right.
The reality is, of course, that the clouds are all a little bit different, and even if you look at their hybrid offerings, they're a bit different. One of my favorite lines on this show, when I had Mike Barrett on and we supported Azure Stack Hub, and I was like, Mike, we've had Azure support for years. Why didn't it take long? He's like, Stu, the device drivers, like, things are different down there. It doesn't, it's like, no, it's the same hardware. It's the same software. It's like, well, yeah, they say that, but the reality is that things are a little bit different. So, look, hybrid, multi-cloud, we'd like to be able to say, like, we just have this magic secret sauce that makes everything work together. Kubernetes is this really thin layer. And while it's wonderful, it doesn't solve all the world. So let's expand a little bit beyond. It's 1.27 in Kubernetes, but as we talk about, the app platform that we build for OpenShift has lots of the layered products that go into it. So in the time we've got left, let's talk a little bit about some of it. Your team works on a lot of these. What are some of the cool app-related enhancements that we see in the new release?
Sure thing. So there is a lot of interest within the CNCF space, as you are aware, for new projects, and the momentum is astonishing, to be honest, because I'm still waiting for the KubeCon that it slows down and more projects come along, right? But one of the areas that you're seeing increased interest is around service mesh. Service mesh has been around for quite a while now, and I would have expected some dampening effect after the hype cycle went down a little bit. What we're seeing in effect, though, is that a lot of our customers have rediscovered the use cases within their organization around service mesh, and a huge interest that is increasing around it. What we have done alongside this release is that we are realigning ourselves with upstream Istio. Istio just recently went to CNCF and graduated, one of the few projects that is graduated there. And we released a dev preview of our Service Mesh 3, OpenShift Service Mesh 3, that realigns based on upstream Istio and make a larger, deeper push in the upstream community to bring the use cases there and make it easier for our customers to follow upstream releases and address their multi-cluster and federation use cases there. That's one of the aspects. Another area that is quite hot in our industry and a lot of interest within Red Hat customers, but we also see it outside, is GitOps still being a very relevant topic, both for cluster management, fleet management, and also application delivery. And with that increase of usage and adoption, customers running into scalability problems as expected. So we have spent a lot of effort on this cycle, this release, on making that easier for customer, like make Argo CD to scale much better automatically based and dynamically based on how the customers are using it or how much load they have, how many clusters they are managing with Argo CD, and that's another area of improvement that we have focused a lot in for bringing within this release.
Okay. Well, first of all, congratulations. I know your team was heavily involved in the service mesh stuff. That was a multi-year effort to kind of bring that, as you said, fully upstream. And some of it was, Istio wasn't in the CNCF before, so we needed to make sure we as we productize things, we're doing the right thing for our customers. But yeah, that effort to kind of bring it together, a lot of work, and definitely pretty exciting there. And yeah, I mean, GitOps is definitely one of the top most used pieces of the stack. It's something that I loved when it was first, the 1.0 release was out. We already had customers talking publicly about it, and I mean, heck, we have a whole live stream that just talks about GitOps because it's so important there. Hey, so we did get a question from the audience, and if you can answer it, great. If not, we'll point them to a resource. But they asked, what about ODF for single node OpenShift? If you know where that support stands.
I'll have to come back to that question and talk to some of my peers, get more detail. I don't want to give mislead anyone. So it would be great to share resources after.
Yeah. Again, as I mentioned earlier, it's like for the most part, things are supported everywhere, but resource constrained when we talk about single node OpenShift. If we're talking about a data product, it's not highly available when we go to single node OpenShift. So obviously there's concerns there, but yeah, we can look into that one. Okay. Yeah, KubeCon, it was interesting. Even the whole app dev discussion. I believe they've got it's a track at the show specifically about app dev. Anything else in our releases people should be looking at the show, or just some of the new pieces from an app dev standpoint?
So if to your point, like this is the first time that they have a co-located event called the AppDevConf that shows like the importance and the attention of people like moving toward higher up in the stack on top of Kubernetes, and definitely encourage people if they are participating in KubeCon, join that. There are a lot of interesting sessions there. We have sessions around, and there's a part of the release as well, like new versions of Carcass as a more cloud native way of building Java applications. Java is not really considered as a cloud native technology, given the history, when Carcass tries to reset that, coming up with new ways and really and innovative ways that make Java adapted to the Kubernetes and containers environments. We have done a ton of work around migration, so we recognize a lot of our customers have existing apps that are coming from elsewhere, and there are enhancements in that helps customers categorize and make a portfolio of applications that are easier to migrate. And the tool does some part of the migration for them as well. And it's following the 80-20 rule and some modification left for the customers. You already mentioned Backstage Developer Hub. Keep an eye for that. That's coming by end of this year in about 2 months, and there will be an announcement at KubeCon. So that's another area that we're spending a lot of our effort with, helping customers to build application platform essentially on OpenShift, the way that you're seeing customers are using the platform.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. Yeah, the Developer Hub activity, take a look at that. A bunch of people from our developer group will be there. My old friends of the Cube, of course, will be at KubeCon. So expect to see a bunch of these topics covered on that program, as well as just dropped our general manager, Joe Fernandez, just did a preview for KubeCon. So we'll pop that link in the chat here. So go watch Joe talk about what's happening in the ecosystem, the community building. What Joe saw was just on, I think it was a 2-week trip over to Europe where he talked to a lot of customers. So, my old boss, Dave Vellante, talking to the guy that hired me here, Joe Fernandez. So it was always fun to see those pieces. So lots to get into there. Siamak, the whole what's new they usually do in it was 90 minutes and it was real tough. We've gotten a good amount of ground covered in 30 minutes here. I'll give you kind of the last word. Any other pieces you want to talk about in 4.14 or just OpenShift in general to help close us out?
I'll just like wrap it up with we tend to talk about a lot of updates and smaller pieces in our what's new to make sure people know what are the things that have changed and what are the improvements. But as a whole, really, what we're working, bringing all these pieces together is we're moving the platform forward as an application platform, helping customers to have a platform that they can build applications on it, deliver applications on it, and manage those applications. So and we in this kind of call we zoom very close to those features, but that's really what brings all of those pieces together. And some of those areas we work on is about improving the operational aspect, some of them about optimizing, and some of them really coming higher up in the stack to focus really on the app dev and those aspects of it. So that mission stands. We do a little bit more every release and address a couple of more pain points that customers have brought to us or new areas that they're asking us to help them in that journey.
Awesome. Cool. We got another, we'll pop in the chat. Somebody who's asking about like single node OKD deployment. I found the documentation online, which, hopefully usually Google search helps. We understand the versions change a bunch and things like that, but feel free to reach out if there are any questions. So Siamak, thank you so much. Congratulations. Your team, the PM team, the broader team. We know it takes a huge village and community for all of these. Our partners and our customers are heavily involved in what we're doing. And I know the team's pretty excited. Do you have some members of your team going to the show, maybe even speaking at the event?
Yes, yeah. One of my one person from one of the PMs my team would go and talk about the app dev conf. She's actually part of the planning committee there, and we'll be talking about Knative there.
All right, so do check it out. If you just go to the KubeCon website, you'll see like Red Hat, like us and Google usually have the most speakers, and it's just because we've got leadership in a lot of the SIGs and a lot of the pieces. So thanks so much, everybody, for watching 4.14. As always, this means, the general availability is, coming shortly on it. Check out the documentation. Reach out if you have any other questions. I'm a little disappointed I don't have a Halloween show planned for this, but if you want to see all the Star Wars gear, go look out the May the 4th episode that I did with our CTO, Chris Wright. We had some fun with Star Wars helmets and the like. I hopefully will have a couple more episodes before the year is done. As I mentioned, I will be at reInvent. Some of my team's going to be at KubeCon. So always reach out if you've got feedback for us, topics or guests that you want us to have on the program, from the cloud native ecosystem. And so with that, we will sign off. Thank you as always for watching us on your journey in the clouds.